Hello viewer, thank you for tuning into Erimo TV where you watch and learn. Ask us any question regarding business studies. You can use our SMS number 22518. You can also use our Facebook page Erimo TV or our Twitter handle Erimo_KE. Today we shall be looking at the size of a farm. We are still on the topic size and location of a farm. We are going to start our lesson by first reviewing our last lesson. Then we go to the size of a farm. I left you with two questions, one of which you're supposed to give the differences between a farm and an industry. So one of the differences, you're supposed to say that a farm is a single business unit, while an industry is made up of several farms. And the other difference you could have given was a farm is under one ownership, while an industry is owned by one or several farms. It is advisable when you're distinguishing between two items, you do it using a table, or you do it in tabular form, because your work appears neat. So even in your exams, always use a table to give the differences between any given items. Question number 2, you are supposed to explain how a farm is supposed to make a decision on economic factors, government policy, and the level of competition, that is, when deciding on what good or service to produce. And we're starting with the level of competition. You're supposed to say that farms find it better to produce commodities that have less protection, that is, less government protection, but with maximum profit. That is, product without patent rights or government protection. Number 2, the other one was the government policy. And you're supposed to say that farms choose to produce products, or farms are supposed to choose to produce products which are not affected by harsh government policies like taxation. Because remember, I told you that the government uses taxation as a way of trying to discourage the consumers from consuming a product by heavily taxing a product. Remember, high tax leads to increase in price of a product. And when a price of a product is high, what happens is that people demand less of that product. Therefore, sales volume goes down, and as a result, little profit is realized at the end of the day. So farms should make sure that the product that they opt to produce are not affected by harsh government policies. So, if anything, farms should go for production of goods and services whose inputs or raw materials are subsidized by the government. The other one was the economic factors. And this one, you're supposed to say that most farms choose to produce products which are least affected by the economic factors, like hike in price of a product, which we refer to as inflation. The other economic factor, size of population, rates of wages, and tax rates. So it's advisable for farms to go for a product that is not, that is least affected, not much affected by inflation, size of population, rates of wages, and tax rate. Let's now look at the specific objectives for our lesson for today. And by the end of this lesson, the learner should be able to explain the criteria used to compare the size of farms. When you talk about the size of a farm can either be large or small. So there is that criteria that we use to tell whether a farm is large or small. So some farms are small while others are said to be large in size. And it's important to note that there is no common basis of measuring and comparing sizes of farms that is the best. That means in all the 5 criteria that we are going to look at in the course of our lesson, we cannot settle for one, because each and every criteria used, or each factor that you are going to look at, has its limitations, and that is why we cannot settle for one. So what are these criteria? So these criteria used to measure and compare the size of farms include: 1, the amount of capital invested in the business. Capital is the initial amount that is used to start up a business. 2, the number of workers employed. These are the people working in a farm. So how do you use the number of workers working in a given farm to judge its size? The other one you are going to look at is the value of output, or the total sales. The other one is the profit generated. And lastly, the geographical area covered and the number of branches that a farm has. Remember, we have said that all the 5 factors we've just mentioned, each one of them has their limitations. So we cannot say this one is the best and the other one is not. So not even one is the best, but we are going to use the 5 of them and see how we can tell whether a farm is a small one or a large one, depending on the 5 criteria we just mentioned. So let's go directly to the first one. The amount of capital invested in the business. So a business with large amount of capital, or whose initial capital is big. Initial capital is referred to as the capital employed. So a farm that has a large capital employed is said to be big or large in size, while a business where the capital employed is less is said to be small in size. An example of farm A and B. Farm A had capital employed 10 million. Farm B, capital employed was 2 million. So it goes without saying that it is taken that farm A is a larger farm, while farm B is a smaller farm, because you can see farm A was started using a capital of 10 million. Farm B was started using a capital of 2 million. So the one with the higher capital employed is said to be the large farm. What do you think is the limitation for this particular point? So you'll find that capital employed alone cannot be a good measure of farm size, because you'll find that some businesses, though having a large sum of capital employed, may have most of the money invested in form of fixed assets like land, premises, buildings, and machinery. So a farm may invest most of its capital in fixed assets, with such examples like the one I've just given. And therefore, we find that the actual value of the stock and the number of employees may be small, hence reducing the size and operations of the business. But this business is huge or is big, because you say, as you can have just explained, a farm may invest its large sum of capital in fixed assets. The other one is the number of workers employed. And you find that a large farm tend to employ a larger number of workers, varying in terms of skill, from unskilled, semi-skilled, to the highly skilled workers. While a small farm just have only few employees. So a farm with many employees is said to be a large farm, while a farm with few employees is said to be small. If Firm A has 10 employees and Firm B has 500 employees, Firm B is said to be bigger or larger because it has more employees. However, you'll find that sometimes this may not apply because you may have a very large firm with very few employees. Reason being, maybe the firm is using what we call capital intensive methods of production. And when we talk of capital intensive methods of production, it's whereby most of the work is done by the machines. On the other hand, you may just have a small farm but with very many employees. Why? If it is labor intensive, where most of the work is done by humans. So that is a limitation for this point, but we say that a large firm tend to employ a large number of workers, where a small firm employ a small number of workers. We continue with the next one. The next criteria is the value of the output or the total sales. Note that the volume of sales is referred to as the turnover. So, a business that has a large turnover or that has a large total volume of sales is said to be a large firm, while the one that has a little turnover is said to be a small in size or a small firm. So a firm that has a large turnover is a large firm. Another one that has just a small turnover is said to be a small firm. So when judging from the total sales, a firm that has a large turnover is said to be a large firm. Let's now look at the limitation of this point. You find that the volume of sales alone or the value of output alone cannot be relied upon as the only measure of the size of a firm. Reason being, you may find a small business having only a few people employed with little capital employed and may be producing high value and expensive goods such as jewelry. So the sale of such few goods would result in high sales figures, creating a wrong impression about the size of a firm. Also note that on the other hand, another business may be having a large capital invested with a large number of workers but producing goods of less value may end up with a comparatively smaller sales value and hence creating the wrong impression of its size. So we may not only rely on this point or to judge on the size of a firm. Let's now look at the next point. And the other criteria that you can use to tell the size of a firm is the profit generated. And under normal circumstances, large firms usually generate more profit or they make high amounts of profit, while the small scale businesses would make a low profit. Let's say maybe have Firm A and Firm B. Firm A generating a profit of 10 million and Firm B generating a profit of 500,000. So Firm A will be said to be big because it's generating a huge amount of profit, and Firm B will be said to be small. So a firm that generates more profit is said to be a large firm. The limitation for this particular point is that the amount of profit made by a business depends on many other factors. For example, efficiency and the scale of the managers. So you'll find sometimes you may find a large firm that is supposed to generate more profit, not generating because the managers are not efficient too. Maybe they lack the skills. It is common to have businesses with very large capital investment, high volume of sales, and a large number of workers, making very little profit or even losses. We look at our next criteria, and our last criteria is the geographical area covered and the number of branches. Large farms tend to occupy a large geographical area, and they have many branches nationally and even internationally. So a farm that occupies a large geographical area is said to be larger. A farm that has many branches nationally and internationally is also said to be a large farm. On the other hand, small farms tend to be small in terms of geographical area, and may have no branches or just have a few branches. Farm A occupies an area of 10 hectares. Farm B occupies an area of 5 hectares. So farm A will be said to be big because it's occupying a large geographical area. However, the limitation for this point could be is that you may find that some businesses may have no branch or just have few branches, and at the same time occupy a relatively small geographical area. However, due to high level of technology and automation, such a farm may produce large volume of sales both locally and internationally. And definitely such businesses cannot be considered to be small in size. So the aspect of technology comes in here. As a farm may appear, or a farm may be sitting on a very small geographical area, but the impact out there is huge due to what you are referring to as the rate of technology. That marks the end of our lesson. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to review some assignment for today. Number 1, define the term turnover. Define the term turnover. Number 2, explain any 3 factors that will determine the size of a farm. We have discussed 5 factors. Explain any 3 that will determine the size of a farm. See you during our next lesson. Our business quote of the day says that we are all given the same number of hours in a day. Some people just use them better, and that's why you find some people more successful than the others. Keep it Elimu TV. Continue watching and learning.